Murray Spates, I think.
If the fate of the universe was on the line, I would want Iguodala.
It's so dumb. Oh, it's still so dumb.
It's the funniest take. I want to see in the production meeting, they were talking about, okay, you take this side and then you take this side. What happened when Max Kellerman said, I'll take the Iguodala side? Everybody's like, what?
All right.
He doubled down on it like last week.
Everyone relax. All right. We're finally ready to roll here on this early January, almost mid-January episode of this podcast. And guys, just when you're getting a little nervous after that Penn State game, look at your Indiana Hoosiers racking off 2 Big Ten wins, both by double digits. And now IU sits at 3-1 in Big Ten play with a big week on the road coming up. We're going to dive into takeaways from the past week, previewing these next 2 matchups, and so much more here on episode 234 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Tuesday, January 11th, 2022, where I am your host, Nithin Krishnan. Here with me tonight is my normal co-host, Matt Lukens, as well as Indiana HQ contributor, Jevan McCoskey. Jevan, I'm going to start with you. You were in person at the IU-Ohio State game. The Hoosiers won it convincingly, 67-51 through their tough defense. Talk to me about Assembly Hall being packed. I know no students were there for that game. The atmosphere came through on TV, and the Hoosiers got a 16-point win.
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned it. First things first, you have to talk about Assembly Hall. But after Assembly Hall being, what it usually is for every game, even without the students, like you mentioned, but everyone knows Assembly Hall is what it is. But you have to talk about the bench, and I'm not talking about the production that they had on the court. I'm talking about the impact that they had, just being positive throughout the entire game. And Anthony Leal is somebody who has done that every single game. He's worn candy stripes, but it was really evident in that game. And it even goes down to someone like Christian Lander, who doesn't get the minutes that everyone thinks that he deserves. Maybe some people are starting to not think that, but even someone like him, it's literally, it is 1 through 13. And I think everybody on that team understands that it's going to take all 13 guys, even the guys who aren't going to be getting the minutes. But the game itself, the most impactful thing to me is how well the defense played against E.J. Liddell. E.J. Liddell is a perennial Big Ten player, someone that everyone looked for to be, contending for Big Ten Player of the Year. He was 3 for 12. And I think that goes 1 through 5 defensively. I don't think it's just Trace. I don't think it's just Race. I think everyone did a good job of digging whenever he would try and get the ball in the post, defending whenever he caught the ball in the wing, because as we saw in their last game, he hit 5 threes in the first 5 minutes. So he has the ability to stretch the floor. But yeah, only 11 points. Anytime you can hold the best player on their team to 11 points, you're going to have a good chance to win that game.
Yeah.
And Indiana did just that.
You were talking about Liddell against Northwestern over the weekend. Yeah, he had something like 17 in the first 10 minutes of that game, and I finished with 34. He is still Ken Palm's Big Ten Player of the Year through halfway through the season so far. And that's even after Indiana limited him. Matt, on our podcast last week, we both predicted that Indiana would win 2 games, and they won 2 games. How about that? What are your thoughts on the Hoosiers these past two victories?
Yeah, I mean, it's nice finally to get that prediction correctly, because I feel like every time we predict that, it one game trips us up, or both, God forbid. But I think the EJ Liddell piece is the key. We talked about going into the game. I said he leads the team in points, rebounds, blocks, and he's second in assists. Now, in this game, he was not the leading scorer. He led the team in rebounds. He led the team in blocks, but he had 0 assists. And I think that's the key. He was 3 of 12 and had 0 assists and 3 turnovers. Because when the ball got to EJ Liddell, the defense collapsed on him, and he made bad decisions all night with the ball in his hands. And that was the reason why we won that game. And that's credit to Trace and Race for forcing him into situations in which most didn't have a very good outcome. Like I can remember a play specifically where EJ catches it on the lower left block, and he goes to post up Trace, and Trace kind of just backs out of the post up, and he kind of falls through and ends up being a turnover, and then Indiana runs it the other way. That was a big play and something that IU obviously was doing very well in. Parker Stewart had a rough game, my boy, 1 of 5. And we can talk about the 3-point shooting. That the second most impressive thing, other than taking EJ Liddell, because that has to be the defense, has to be first off talked about, and that's why Jevan talked about it first. But the offense was 2 of 15 from 3, and we won by 16 points.
That's impressive. That's very impressive.
It's extremely hard to do.
Yeah.
Extremely hard to do. Again, given how important the 3-point line and 3-point game and 3-point shot has been to modern basketball. We won this game through hustle on the offensive end, cutting, good post ups, good matchup execution, offense, and not turning the ball over. I know it's crazy. But
breaking news. Yeah.
I know we only had, I believe, 9 turnovers this game, which is insane. It's actually the most out of the last 3 games. And I think this offense is starting to come around. Now, the shooting would be nice if it was there as well. We would have won by 30, but it is what it is.
Well, I think what's nice is we got down early. We got punched in the mouth.
Yeah, we did.
I know we didn't shoot the ball well, but it like you mentioned, that defense is what brought us back. And I think a lot of not all the credit, obviously, but the coaching staff and Dane Fife in particular deserves a lot of credit when it comes to that defensive effort, because I saw a few videos on Twitter of slow motion breaking down the play, and Dane Fife is up every single time, standing on both feet, calling out the play that is about to happen. Grace Thompson, I think, meets EJ Liddell where he is supposed to be, and he beats him there, forces a turnover. It's just little things like that go a very long way, especially against top 15 teams like Ohio State.
Well, and that bench energy, I implore everyone listening to this podcast to pay attention during half-court sets, during just as they go into commercial break or they just come out of commercial break. Everyone on that sideline's engaged. I absolutely cannot go another 2 minutes without talking about Trey Galloway and the kind of impact that the Culver product made in his 2 games since returning. But first, everyone needs to buckle up, all right? Because it kind of flew under the radar after IU's 13-point win over Minnesota on Sunday. But check this out. These were the first consecutive double-digit Big Ten wins for Indiana since March 2019. That's pre-pandemic, okay? That was the end of the Romeo Langford season. IU has played 2 full seasons since they have won consecutive Big Ten games by double digits. They did it at the end of the regular season in March 2019. The last time Indiana's won consecutive Big Ten games by double digits with a ranked team involved was back in the 2012-13 season, the year IU reached number 1. That year in February, they knocked off Ohio State on the road by 13 points. The Buckeyes were ranked number 10 at that point. The Hoosiers followed that win up with a home win over unranked Nebraska. And the last number, remember when Indiana under Archie Miller was 3-9 after beating ranked teams? Well, it looked a little nervy at the start of that Minnesota game, in the middle of that Minnesota game, but the Hoosiers ended up winning. It's the first time they've had a follow-up game after beating a ranked opponent, so the Hoosiers started off 1-0 there. Guys, Trey Galloway, absolutely sensational in his 2 games. Quality of minutes over quantity. You thought you had seen it all when he came into that Ohio State game. And I'm going to say his numbers, but it didn't, they go so much deeper than that, right? Against Ohio State, 8 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals. Against Minnesota, he followed it up with another strong outing. In that game against the Gophers, Galloway put up 6 points, 3 boards, a steal, and a block as well. It goes so much deeper than that, though, Jevan. I mean, he really changed both games whenever he came into the contest.
Yeah, he is a complete game changer. And Trace obviously gets the headline because of these 2 games, especially against Ohio State with the 27, 12, and 5 that he had. But if Trey doesn't play in those games or play the way that he did, who knows how it goes.
Right.
He comes off the bench and gives the energy, gives the five that are out there the energy that they need. And Mike Woodson put it best again after the Ohio State game. He said he played 19 minutes, but you would have thought he played 40. Like that's just how impactful of a game that he had. And like I said, I was at that Ohio State game. The energy every time he touched the ball it was just everyone knew that something could happen. And something that needs to happen more, I think, with Trey Galloway is let him run the point a little bit. I do like it whenever he has the ball in his hands. We'll talk a little later about our guard play, so we'll get into that. But I do think that he deserves to run some of the offense. And he had 4 assists against Ohio State in 19 minutes. So
Galloway was a team high plus 37 over the last 2 contests for Indiana. Matt, I mean, what should Mike Woodson do now with Trey Galloway? I mean, is this the role for him? Should it expand? Should it, I don't know, reduce? It can't be that. Obviously, you had to be impressed by Galloway's performance coming off, what was it, a 6-week absence?
Yeah, I extremely impressed, but I would say I was surprised. Like I said last week on the show, we talked about people coming back. The first words out of my mouth were Trey Galloway,
yep.
Right? And you saw what he brought early on this season as far as energy and ball movement and just overall hustle on both sides of the court. And we've been seeing that now. Now, what I'd like to challenge Trey is that he's got to hit a couple 3-pointers. He's got to. He missed one in the Minnesota game. I'm pretty sure that he took. He's got to show that he's going to be able to spread the floor, because I'm waiting for the first team that when he's out there sags off. I'm waiting for it, because he doesn't take 3-pointers. He doesn't, when he gets the ball, he doesn't even look to take 3-pointers all that often. You've got to at least be a threat out there, right? Like Xavier Johnson is not the best 3-point shooter in the world, but he's going to take them. And right. So you got to be out there to at least, contest a shot. And that's the next step for Trey. But I agree with Jevan. Run him at the point. I know I've talked about that crazy lineup, Galaxy Brain, back a couple weeks ago, where I said running Trey Galloway at the point and then having the 2 wings and the 2 bigs out there. And I still think that lineup makes a lot of sense to me. But his role is going to stay the same. His role is going to stay the same, what it is right now. He might get a little bit more minutes. That's more due to Miller Kopp kind of being.
So I want to talk about that, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about it.
I'm willing to accept Mike Woodson putting Trey Galloway in the starting lineup over Miller Kopp. And it's not so much like Kopp is bad and Galloway is good. It's nothing to do with that. But Miller Kopp has only averaged 4.5 points per game since December 1st. Okay. And what I'm saying is, Trey Galloway's gap in his game is probably his shooting ability. Let the 4 other guys on the floor, Xavier Johnson, Parker Stewart, Race Thompson, Trace Jackson Davis, handle that. And then Kopp can come in, have the ball in his hands a little more, and try to get back to the level he was at Northwestern. Is that a ridiculous thought, Jevan? Or do you see some merit in having Trey Galloway get a start here sometime soon?
Okay, well, there's definitely some merit to it. But in my opinion, the worst thing to do for a shooter is to reduce his ability to shoot the ball. And I think if you bring a player that can shoot the ball like Miller can off the bench, like you said, he's averaging 4 points in the last however many games. What is bringing him off you're bringing him off the bench, he's still going to get the same shots. So I just don't necessarily think that it's going to change that much of his play. Miller's a confident player. He's in a slump. He's going to continue to take the shots. Eventually, he is going to knock them down. We've seen him be able to do it. It's just a shoot. He's just going through a slump. Every shooter has one, and I believe that he will come out of it, and he's going to come out of it in an important time. I mean, we're getting into the heart of Big Ten play, so it's going to have to happen soon if and when it does. But I think Trey is such a big spark off the bench that Woodson's almost forced to keep him there. He has the ability to start. I'm not knocking Trey whatsoever. He's far good enough to start on this team, but bringing him off the bench just allows his game to show that much more, in my opinion.
And starting doesn't matter. I think that's the key. Starting
play 20 minutes a game.
Yeah, starting means absolutely nothing other than, I think, that starting unit without, because the closing unit recently has been without Parker Stewart and without Miller Kopp. It's been Xavier Johnson, Rob Phinisee,
Galloway.
Galloway.
And then the two forwards. Yeah.
Then
Thompson and Jackson Davis.
Our two stars.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's the lineup we will see closing games. Outside of, I think there'll be a few games where teams might have a little bit more size at the 2 and 3 position where you might not see X or Rob. One of those will be out and we'll have somebody in there. I don't even know. Miller Kopp maybe. But the starting lineup makes sense because of the way we play the first 4 minutes, which is that get the ball to Race if they or Trace, and if they're doubling either of them, kick it out to the shooters. Set screens for X, get him dribble penetration and kick out or hit the roll. That makes sense to me. That lineup works. That play style works. It's hard to game plan for. If you put Galloway in the starting lineup over somebody like Miller Kopp, it becomes right. Jevan's making the constricted.
That's why you got to watch
sound.
the YouTube.
Yeah. And he's right. It will constrict the defense because there's less shooters, less space. The reason why they don't do that when you have the closing lineup out there is because you have to respect Rob because he at least attempts them and he's shown he can make them. X, the same thing. And Race is the same thing. So for those 3 players, you have to at least guard out to the perimeter. And then Galloway's so good off of ball screens. And with the ball in his hands, you got to trap him or get him off of his lane or his line into the lane when he gets the ball. So you have to play him out. And that's why that lineup makes so much sense.
Yeah, and I'm just curious if maybe a move to the bench for Miller Kopp can spark him, if nothing else, even just for a game. We saw something similar, although we don't know all the details behind it, when Parker Stewart came off the bench a couple of weeks ago. It's always a motivator, right? And so, we'll see what Mike Woodson does there. I see everyone in the live chat, Jack and Forrest. Hello. Jack pointing out Nebraska out in front on Illinois early. So you got to watch out for the Cornhuskers who had a rough season. We're going to talk about Indiana's matchup with Iowa and Nebraska coming up. Denny Brown points out, Galloway performed well, did it in critical time. So glad to see this for him and the team. Yeah, I think that's a great point because Trace Jackson Davis had a good start against Ohio State, but it was when Galloway came into the game that you really saw Indiana's offense hit another level. Both of you talked about Indiana's closing lineup. Finney, Johnson, Galloway, Thompson, and Jackson Davis went plus 23 over the last 2 games, outscoring Ohio State and Minnesota 35-12. Matt, is this the death lineup for Indiana here? I mean, this does feel like it has staying power for the rest of the season. I know it's only been 2 games, but I don't see why it would be any different in February or March.
It had staying power the minute this season started. He was a major part of this team to begin with before he got injured. Remember, he was making plays in that St. John's game.
Yes, he was.
So I don't think this is not something new. Now, this is something that we forgot about in the couple months that he was missing, right? But he's been there. He was that piece. He was playing over Leal. Like Leal came in and was playing his minutes basically because he got injured. And we wouldn't be talking about Anthony Leal at all if it wasn't for him getting injured in the St. John's game.
Exactly. And interestingly enough, in the last 5 halves of basketball, Anthony Leal has not seen the floor. All it takes is 1 game, though, for Mike Woodson to pull a fast one, whether it could be against Iowa coming up, could be against Nebraska. Of course, Anthony Leal will stay ready to roll as usual. Jevan, you were there at Assembly Hall to see Trace Jackson Davis murder Ohio State. We've gone half an hour. We've gone 25 minutes not really talking about TJD because I guess 27, 12, and 5 blocks. Nothing to scoff at. He had the quietest 13.12 rebound game against Minnesota, too. I mean, let's give him his due. This guy's a star. Just talk to us about how great Jackson Davis was, especially against the Buckeyes.
The numbers are great, and it's something that we definitely need to touch on. But his leadership role has just grown through the roof, and it's so cool to see. I mean, we just got done talking about Trey Galloway, but the first person to meet him after a timeout was called because of a play that he made was Trace Jackson Davis at half court. It's just something that's really cool to see. But when you look at the numbers, 27, 12, and 5 blocks against Ohio State, a top 15 team against EJ Liddell, who's a top 10 player in the country. That is impressive, I think, to say the least. And it's so crazy because he's so dominant. He's 11 for 17, and people, myself included, have knocked him for not shooting the ball. But I mean, when you don't have to, like, there's no reason to force it. And like you said, quiet 13 and 12, his 28th career double-double. He's just getting better and better with every game that goes on. He's starting to shoot a little better from the foul line too, which is really good to see. The team as a whole actually is starting to shoot a lot better from the foul line. But yeah, Trayce Jackson-Davis he's the man, and everything runs with him. As he goes, we go. But yeah, he's very good.
Trayce plays winning basketball. That's what he does.
Right.
Yeah.
He knows how to win. He just knows how to win.
Yeah.
That's exactly what he does. And you talk about, right, he doesn't have to shoot, right? And I mean, it's almost to the point where, right, when you have sort of the most skilled guy at the YMCA doesn't have to settle for 3-point jumpers or even mid-range, right? If he can blow past his defender to the rim, he's just going to do that, right? There's no reason to change the strategy there. Although what Trayce Jackson-Davis has gotten much better at, and Matt, you can talk about this in a minute, but like against Minnesota, I saw Jackson-Davis, especially when Indiana was slumping a little bit, call for the basketball a little bit more. He seemed more assertive. He seemed more proactive as far as saying, look, we're not losing this game to the Gophers. I felt like in both halves, Matt, Jackson-Davis did a good job in really setting that standard, not only leadership off the court, but on the court, right? Demand the basketball. We've asked that from him for a while.
Yes, we have been asking him to demand the basketball because we know he plays winning basketball, right? Like we know he's willing to be unselfish. That's fine, but this team goes as far as Trayce goes, right? And so when Trayce has a bad game, all of a sudden, or is not taking enough shots, right? The team is doing a poor job of getting him the ball. This team does not play nearly as well as it did against Ohio State, not nearly as well as it did at times against Minnesota. And I said at times specifically because in the Minnesota game, we did not play the same style of basketball for all 40 minutes as we did against Ohio State. Against Ohio State, we played consistently well. And at worst, we were playing them even. Against Minnesota, especially coming out the second half, to start the second half, the first couple minutes of the second half, we let them right back into it. Minnesota was getting everything they wanted on ball screens, everything they wanted. Trayce, you could see right at that last immediate timeout when we were down 1 point.
Yeah.
He went into the huddle frustrated and was like, give me the ball, basically. You can kind of see him like verbally saying like, just give it to me. And came out of the timeout. They got a shot for him. Or I think they got a shot for Race actually out of the timeout. Yeah. And then Geronimo got the rebound, gave it to Kopp. And then I believe the next bucket was Trayce. So that they got people the ball where they needed the ball. Trayce eventually got the ball. And 13 points, 12 rebounds is nothing to scoff about. But I would much rather talk about his 2 assists because this game, he was really good at finding that extra guy when he was doubled, kicking it out, and we were hitting 3-pointers. You know, we were 9 of 24 from 3. And I think this year we said we'd win a lot of games if we shot more than 23 pointers and made about 30% of them. And 37.5% from 3 is something that I will take every single day, especially after the 15% performance and the blowout win against Ohio State.
Yeah, there was one particular pass that Jackson-Davis made against Minnesota where the BTN cameras had some technical difficulty, so he had the alternate angle, and you could see him on the low block on one side of the court whip a pass to the opposite wing, and Parker Stewart drained a 3. Jevan, Jackson-Davis, outstanding.
Yeah, there's 2 things that stand out after both of these games, mainly following the Penn State game. And Trayce talked about it in his presser. He was asked, Coach Woodson got on you. He called you out, and this is how you responded. And he said that him and Woody have that relationship where he can call him out and he can go, do exactly what he needs him to do. And that is so important for this team because, as Matt said, and as I said earlier, this team goes as Trayce goes. But also, this team can win in a lot of different ways. It's starting to show. Mm-hmm. Like, we can win on the defensive end. If the offense isn't going, we'll shut you down on defense. But there's also games where Rob Finney has not shown that he can shoot the ball, and he hits 4 threes in the first half against Minnesota. So we can win in a bunch of different ways. We can shoot from the 3 now. We can obviously dominate inside with Race and Trace, and we can also lock down on defense. This season's starting to get really, really interesting and really, really fun.
It is, and really the last box Indiana has to check is winning on the road. We're going to get to that in just a moment. I did want to talk to both of you guys about IU's guard play, and a lot of guys we can go back and forth about here, right? It's hard as a basketball fan to watch players play and you see their shooting numbers and say, wow, they played well, right? But you see a few times here now where Xavier Johnson and Rob Finney, and you can include Trey Galloway in this as well, they're not exactly putting up gaudy numbers. But, Matt, as you look at the backcourt, they are showing improvement. And I think at this point in the season, that's the most important thing.
They're showing improvement, and they're showing a willingness to be what's the word? Unselfish.
Yeah.
Yes.
Agreed. Yeah.
I used it earlier and I forgot the dang word, but they are willing to be unselfish. And Xavier Johnson, what was the one thing everybody got mad about after the Syracuse game? Well, they thought he was being
reckless,
selfish, reckless, right. And they thought he was being selfish with the ball. Remember, he took like 5 straight possessions. He took
Wisconsin
shots.
Game, the Wisconsin game.
Yeah. The Wisconsin game. Yeah, sorry, Wisconsin game, not Syracuse. Syracuse game, he got reckless and fouled.
The foul trouble, right?
Which he still has had trouble with, by the way, because the last 2 games he's had 4 fouls. So I think that's here to stay. But he is extremely unselfish. 5 assists this game. 5 assists. Like, we'll take that from our point guard, our starting point guard. Finney with 2 steals, right? We'll take that from Finney. And they complement each other so well when on the court. Rob doesn't need the ball, even though he can do things with it. He shot 4 of 9 from 3 this game, which we'll always take. But Xavier Johnson and Rob Finney have been playing really, really well. And we've talked about ad nauseum about Trey Galloway. I don't need to talk about him at all. But
Jevan, I mean, it's been great to see Xavier Johnson just 1 turnover each of his last 2 games. I mean, do you think he can get out of the foul trouble? Is that something that's coachable, or do you think you just have to kind of bear with it at this point?
Listen, I think that just comes with the motor that he plays with, and I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. Yeah, some of the fouls might come at a bad time, but I'd rather have somebody who's going to play at 100% every single play than someone who's going to take a little bit of time off. And I think that both guards do that. I will stand by. I think that Rob Finney is the best on-ball defender in the Big Ten. I've thought that since his sophomore year. I know he's been injured, but I think he's the best on-ball defender in the Big Ten. I think both, as Matt mentioned, are doing a great job of getting their teammates involved. And some people don't, but I love how fast Xavier plays and how slow Rob might seem to play at times. I think they kind of contrast, but in a positive way. In a positive way to me. Because we all know Xavier's going to put shots up. He's going to try and get to the rim. He's going to get fouled and get to the free throw line. And Rob kind of, he'll look to drive in, pull it back out,
probe the defense.
He looks for everything. But we have seen a more aggressive Rob Finney the last week of basketball, and that's also very promising to see.
I don't even think it's aggressiveness, because people will talk about his aggressiveness, right? Like, you think he plays passive.
Yeah.
When he plays passive, he looks uncomfortable. He looks comfortable. That's what it is. That was a poster and a half for the Texas Tech game. My bad. I have that on in the other screen. And
good game right now.
Yeah, somebody just posterized the living heck out of a Baylor defender. Anyways, that took my breath away. Wow, I lost my train of thought. Anyways,
it's all good.
We're back to he looks comfortable. He looks comfortable.
Decisiveness, not so much aggressiveness.
Thinking everything through. It looks like he's just playing basketball at this point. Like, he's not every single step he takes.
I mean, and I just love the fact that it was clear Minnesota was sagging off of him when he was in the game, and then he forced Minnesota to change their defense. That's exactly the kind of thing you want to see. The chat has pointed out, yes, Denny, Tamar Bates in a funk. It happens, right? It happens with true freshmen. Doesn't matter what your recruiting ranking is, and not everyone's going to be Zion or RJ Barrett. So
we'll take some of those. We'll take a couple of those, though.
You're just going to have to live with some of it. there's obviously going to be a number of games. There are going to be obviously a number of games down the stretch here in the second half of the season where Indiana's going to get 15 really quality minutes out of Tamar Bates in a game. Just have to go game to game, see what happens when it happens.
That might be the Nebraska game. We get that, by the way. We might get some solid minutes from him against Nebraska coming up.
Looking forward.
Are you looking
to
at my notes, Matt?
Well, my bad. Sorry.
Well, and this is the thing, Denny is also mentioning that Logan Duncombe. Yeah, we don't really know what situation is. There is Mike Woodson availability on Wednesday. Maybe there'll be some more light shed on Duncombe's situation. You just gonna have to stick to us on Twitter at Indiana HQ to find out all the updates. So Indiana 2-0 week. Love seeing it. We started earlier telling you exactly how rare it is in the Hoosier program in the current state of affairs to win consecutive Big Ten games convincingly. Indiana went out and did that this past week. So big road trip coming up. But first, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. And let's all tip our caps and send our congratulations to goalkeeper Roman Celentano, who had a great career at Indiana. Celentano was picked second overall in the MLS draft by FC Cincinnati. It was the 5th straight year that an Indiana Hoosier has been taken in the top 10. Cincinnati's head coach is IU soccer alum Pat Noonan, so they're already going to get off to a good start. In fact, Celentano referenced Noonan in sort of his post-selection release issued by Indiana University. So great for Roman Celentano. I fully expect him to have a strong MLS career. He's one of the best keepers that I have seen at Indiana over the last 10 to 15 years. So can't wait to see what his college career looks like. If his professional career looks like. If you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ, as well as at the Hoosier Sound. And this part is important. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself, especially as we get into the 2022 portion of the men's and women's basketball season. All right, guys, 2 big road games this week. IU heads to Iowa and Nebraska, out to the Big Ten West Country. The Hoosiers on Thursday night hit the road at Iowa, 9 Eastern start. That, of course, means there will be a preceding game. So hopefully everything goes to plan and the game before Indiana ends promptly. Never happens. We'll see it. The game will be on Fox Sports 1. So make sure you fire up that Fox Sports app because you're going to need it. Joe Davis and Bill Raftery are on the call. Pretty premier broadcasting team calling this Indiana-Iowa game. Raftery did the IU-Ohio State game last week. The Hawkeyes better than expected this season. They're 11-4, 1-3 in conference play, coming off an 8-point loss at Wisconsin last week. It's going to be another game where the Hoosiers have a rest disadvantage. Iowa will have a full week off before playing the Hoosiers on Thursday. Of course, IU played Minnesota on Sunday. The Hawkeyes are the 27th ranked team in KenPom. IU is 24th, so both teams are neck and neck in all honesty. Iowa's strength, though, is their offense. They're the 3rd-rated offense in the country, according to KenPom, out of 358. Of course, Indiana's strength is their defense, which is ranked 10th in the country. According to KenPom, IU is projected to lose 79-76. Jevan, Iowa lost a lot of key pieces from last season. Luka Garza, Joe Wieskamp, CJ Frederick, Jack Nungy as well transferred out of the program. But their star is Keegan Murray, and he's the player you've got to know. Tell us what IU fans need to know about Keegan Murray, and who are you expecting to get that matchup on Thursday night?
Keegan Murray is one of those players that you watched last year, and you were just like, he's going to break out and be a stud. It's just only a matter of time. And that is exactly what's happening. He's averaging 25 points per game. What's even more impressive than that is he's averaging 30 in his last 3 games. And what's even more impressive than that is that he's shooting 60% from the field, and he's a 3-level scorer. He's not someone who just plays at the rim. He gets to the foul line, gets to the rim, shoots mid-range, and shoots the 3-ball. So that's Keegan Murray. He's going to put up points, and it's almost one of those situations that we have seen in the past where when we play Iowa, we let one player try and beat us. And that player in the past has been Luka Garza, but it's the surrounding cast that you have to shut down because Keegan Murray is going to get his. Who I think is going to get that matchup assignment, I think this is going to be a Jordan Geronimo breakout game on the defensive end.
I think Jordan Geronimo is the Iowa special usually.
He is, absolutely.
Actually,
yeah, he is. No, but I think Race is going to get the start on him. Obviously, Race is going to start. But I think Jordan Geronimo is going to come in and make his presence felt on the defensive end. So that is who I expect to get that assignment most of the game.
Yeah, should be really interesting to see how that plays out. Murray is a 6'8", 215-pound small forward. So those of you at home can sort of do the matchups in your head. He is an in-state product. Went to high school in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. He stayed and played for the Hawkeyes. Matt, obviously Keegan Murray is going to be a big matchup. There's not much else on the Hawkeyes. How, if you were Mike Woodson and the coaching staff, how would you approach this matchup? Would you sort of cover everyone else and just let Keegan Murray go crazy, or really focus your efforts on Murray and force all the other guys to beat you?
I think the answer here is you got to shut down everybody else. Jordan Bohannon can't be running around trying to fire off 40-foot three-pointers. He will try to.
No, he loves doing it against us, so he will. Like, it just needs to be known.
The attempt will be made, but he cannot do it successfully. Patrick McCaffrey can't do McCaffrey things. Chris Murray can't be getting every rebound under the sun. And then Tony Perkins you have to shut him down and make sure that he's not shooting the 3 points. Well, if you can do that, I think we'll be fine. I think this is going to be a tough game for Xavier Johnson because Joe Toussaint, who comes off the bench, is actually a pretty good defensive player.
He did start Iowa's last game, so we'll see what happens as far as Thursday's concerned.
Right. So he might start, but he's going to have a tough time, getting separation from him because he's just a guy that's like glue. He just sticks to you. And the rest of the team, they're actually they're not that scary in my opinion, outside of Keegan Murray, Patrick McCaffrey, and Jordan Bohannon. The rest of the team is very doable. I think the Hawkeyes are like Nebraska with
I completely agree.
A fantastic player with one fantastic player. That's exactly, they play fast. They shoot the three pretty okay. They shoot better than Nebraska does, but they take a ton of 3-pointers. They play really fast. They play zero defense, and they have one really, really good player. And so it's almost like last year, except that one really good player, Keegan Murray, is not as good of a passer as last year's big man Garza was. Garza was really good at passing out of double teams, getting teammates that are open. Keegan Murray is very much a ball stopper. When he gets the ball, he's going to go at it with the ball, and he's very successful at it. Very successful at it, but he doesn't make his teammates better. And that was something that Garza really excelled at.
Chris Murray, by the way, is the twin brother of Keegan Murray, so that could be a little wrinkle in the pregame preparation. Keegan wears number 15. Chris wears number 24. Unless, of course,
are they identical twins?
Unless they switch jerseys, which I don't know. I don't know how you could.
Are they identical?
They are. Yeah. Isn't that fun?
Same like frame and everything. Like they literally are built the exact same.
So
how mad must the other twin be that his other twin's averaging 25?
The funny thing is, Matt, you were talking about Nebraska. It's a very it's a legitimate comparison, but a major stretch. Nebraska is just much worse of a basketball team than Iowa is. Iowa's an elite offense in college basketball. A similar matchup, a similar opponent that Indiana has played, as far as I'm concerned, is St. John's. St. John's is a team that had a sort of a one-horse show, a one-man band. That's why, a one-man band, not a one.
And what happened that game with Champagne, right? We let him get his points, and the rest of the people, we said, no, this is not happening. And that will be the same way in this game. And Ken Pom is very much underestimating us, or I guess I'm underestimating how bad we play on the road. So I don't know which one it is, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I was looking, and ESPN's given us a 26% chance to win this game. That seems very, very low. Now, I know we are trying to get that monkey off of our back still of winning a road game, but like, I don't know. Near 25% chance seems just very low.
I think part of it is the models are looking at this Iowa team, baking in some of what happened last year. They do have some holdovers from last season.
Well, they should be baking in the fact that we won there last year. That's what they should be baking.
We're in the last 4 or 5 years have been pretty successful in Iowa.
Yeah.
And then you look at Iowa this season, a very sort of boom or bust type of team. They put together an outstanding performance when they beat Utah State, a pretty solid mid-major, by 19 points. On the other hand, they also played really well. Road loss at Purdue, a game that Iowa was leading, I believe, late in the second half. A strong performance at home against an Illinois team that's now playing a lot better. And meanwhile, last one there, Iowa also won at Virginia. Again, true road win in that building. Pretty hard to do, although Virginia's in a bit of a rut this season, to put it lightly. Iowa, though, has some rough losses, right? The road game at Wisconsin, they were never really in it. The road trip to Iowa State, big in-state rivalry against the Hawkeyes. It was rough going for the Hawkeyes. So interesting team. They're hard to sort of put a pulse on, but Indiana is obviously going to go in there and win. Jevan, as you look at the Hoosier side of things, you can expect this game to be pretty up-tempo. You can expect the Hawkeyes to protect the basketball. They do a really good job at that. Who are one or two Hoosiers you're expecting to step up on Thursday night?
I would love for off the bench for Tamar to get back to how we saw him at the beginning of the season. Now, in my notes, Matt looked at them earlier. I had that I wanted him to do it against Nebraska, but if he can do it a game earlier, that made me that much more happy. I think you're going to get what you're going to get from Trace Jackson Davis, and I would love to see a continuation of what we saw from Rob Phinisee in his last game. Just continue to be able to, have the willingness to take those shots. Because, once you have a couple go in, the basket starts to get a lot bigger, and we know that Rob has the ability to knock him down. And once he has a game like that, who knows what can happen in the next game. So I would say I would love to see Tamar Bates take that next step, and for Rob Phinisee to have a continuation game that he had against Minnesota.
Yeah, and with Bates, we talked about the St. John's game, for example. Bates had 11 points in that contest. Matt, how about you? Who are one or two Hoosiers you're looking to shine on Thursday night against the Iowa Hawkeyes?
Well, before I talk about that, I would like to give a shout out to the 76 Hoosiers, who still remain the last undefeated team in college basketball. As the Baylor Bears lose at home to the Texas Tech Red Raiders. And we will have a new number one college team in college basketball next week. Anyways.
Also, really quick, Nebraska up 3 at halftime against number 25 Illinois.
That is interesting.
And an Illinois team that ranks much higher in the computers, an Illinois team that's number 12 in KenPom. So
that's true.
Fascinating.
That's true.
Yeah. So Matt, one or two Hoosiers step up against Iowa on Thursday night.
Jevan stole my notes when he pointed out that this is going to be the Jordan Geronimo game. But what he didn't point out is that Anthony Leal is going to get time this game, because he's the guy that moved the ball, extra pass, shooting. And I'd like to add this. I think our wings are going to start to get in foul trouble, trying to double and help off of Keegan Murray. And so somebody's going to have to come in and give them minutes. Trey Galloway will be already playing. That's guaranteed. But I think Anthony Leal will come in along with Tamar Bates. And one of Tamar Bates or Anthony Leal is going to have a great game at Iowa, and we're going to be fine and roll out with a victory.
Going to be fine and roll out with a victory. So we're asking for Miller Kopp to do something. We're asking for him to do something. And I could see him in the early part of this game get the assignment, and I want to see him do something. So he's somebody I'm going to have my eyes on Thursday night, okay?
When you Miller, say get the assignment, do you mean on Keegan Murray?
On Keegan Murray.
I would not do that if I was Mike Woodson.
I think overall Mike Woodson's going to throw a number of different guys. I could see Kopp getting some chances. Race Thompson, Geronimo,
I just don't think Kopp moves his feet laterally enough, quickly enough to stay
Kopp-
with Keegan Murray.
Yeah, Kopp is going to be put on a mixtape if he guards Keegan Murray.
He's not a bad defender. He's just not quick enough to stay in front of
Exactly. He's
Yeah.
going to get burnt like at least 3 times.
All I'm saying is, for somebody who started the season well, right? In November, in 7 games, Miller Kopp averaged double digits in the points per game category. He has not cracked that since the Syracuse game. Whether it's on offense or on defense or on both, I'm going to have my eyes on Miller Kopp. But as far as a guy that I'm actually projecting to have a good game, I'm going to get back to Indiana's tandem inside, Race and Trace. Iowa does a decent job rebounding the ball this year, but a lot of it comes from Keegan Murray, comes off the wing, and a lot of it comes from their center, Philip Rabrazza, who he's got to prove himself a little bit more, okay, before he's considered to be a strong rebounder in this conference. Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis did an excellent job securing boards against Ohio State, against Minnesota. Both guys are in the top 10 in rebounding in the Big Ten as far as conference games are concerned. So they're doing it against tough opponents. I fully expect both of them to get over at least 7 rebounds each against Iowa, especially after Woodson sort of sparked Trace Jackson Davis with the whole 5 rebounds thing against Penn State. So definitely looking forward to seeing that. And then, of course, Race Thompson specifically gets some defense against Keegan Murray. Of course, Race does so many other things too, moving the basketball, getting those steals and blocks. So definitely looking forward to that matchup. So guys, let's get a prediction out there. Indiana looking for their first road win this season. Matt, I'm going to start it with you. Again, Ken Pom has the Hawkeyes winning 79-76.
Just flip that. I think we win 79-76. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, but I stole it from you. But I do think it'll be in the mid-70s, the score line, because again, Iowa plays no defense, but they play a ton of offense. And I think IU will win on some very clutch free throws in the end by Geronimo. There you go.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Wow.
I love that. All right, Jevan, how about you? Who you got in this game and by how much?
If you haven't watched a podcast or listened to a podcast where Matt and I are on the podcast at the same time, we tend to do this a lot where we take each other's answers.
Yeah.
In my head, I was like, just flip it. Just flip it.
Yeah.
So I'll go 81-78 IU. I think, like I said, I want a great game from Rob Finney, a continuation game, and I think we're going to get a big game from Tamar Bates as well off the bench.
If my analysis is right, the only defense like Indiana that Iowa has played this year is not Wisconsin. Wisconsin not as elite of a defense as they have been in previous years. It's not Virginia. Virginia not as elite of a defense as they've been in previous years.
Virginia's bad.
The elite defense that Iowa has played this season was Iowa State. And that was a game the Hawkeyes lost by 20 points. I don't think Indiana's going to win by 20, but I think Indiana's going to win this one pretty comfortably. I think Iowa's overachieved. I think you're getting them at a right time in the season. I think Indiana's better than their record, which is crazy to say. But this is a team that's won a lot of games comfortably, and their only 3 losses have been by slim margin. This Penn State team looks better than we thought when the Hoosiers played them a week and a half ago. Syracuse is worse. But at the end of the day, I think Indiana's going to go and win this game in Iowa City 77-65. I've got the Hoosiers winning this game by 12 points. So that's what we think about IU's match against Iowa, but don't go anywhere. We're about to talk about the Hoosiers and the Nebraska Cornhuskers Martin Luther King Day affair coming up in just a second. To give you our social media shout out, I just wanted to mention that right now during our season here, especially with Jevan here, we are daily updating our Indiana HQ Twitter account and all our social media pages. It constantly moves at this point in the season, not just with men's basketball, but the women's basketball team still in the top 6 right now. In the college game, it should have been 5th, but we're not going to get into that. The football program has a lot of news swirling around it. Obviously, a surprise to see Charlton Warren move on to North Carolina, but Indiana is trying to move quickly, it looks like, to fill in that defensive coordinator position. Of course, a lot of transfer news. Indiana adding Miles Jackson as well as Jared Casey this past week to transfer defensive players to boost that pass rush. Miles Jackson from UCLA, Casey from Kentucky. So definitely lots happening. You can follow us on Twitter, on Facebook, and on YouTube at Indiana HQ or at the Hoosier Sound. Matt, on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
There you go. And so you can follow us throughout the entire rest of the season. If you already do follow us, make sure you tell your friends, your family, strangers on the sidewalk. It doesn't really matter. So make sure you give them the heads up to give us the follow. Jevan does a great job with boots on the ground in Bloomington at Assembly Hall, giving you everything you need to know. So can't wait to see what the rest of the season has in store. Make sure you give us the follow if you have not already. So let's wrap up here. The Hoosiers head to Lincoln, Nebraska on Monday evening, 6 p.m. Eastern, start a little bit earlier. Game will be on Big Ten Network. Nebraska does play Friday at Purdue. So, if you want, you can tune in and see how the Cornhuskers do against the Boilermakers. Of course, Nebraska is also playing right now here as we record on Tuesday night against the Illinois Fighting Illini, and Nebraska is looking pretty good in that game. Nebraska on the season has been horrible. They sit in the 150s in KenPom. Their offense isn't good. Their defense isn't good. Fred Hoiberg has been a disaster through 3 seasons as head coach of the Nebraska basketball program. 19-55 in his career. Could get win number 20 tonight, I guess. 5-39 in Big Ten play. And on Saturday, they lost at Rutgers. 93-65.
Goodness gracious.
Jevan, let's talk about the Nebraska Cornhuskers. This is a team that has got some talent, good guard play. What should Hoosier fans know about Nebraska?
They've got some good talent, but they've also got some injuries that they've been plagued with, and that puts a lot of pressure on freshman Bryce McGowens. Now, he's a very, very good player, very talented, but he's still very raw. He's still becoming the player that he's still, more building his body to become the player that we all think that he will be. But like I said, he's very good, and he's getting better with every single game that he plays right now. Against Illinois, he is 10.5. He's starting to get more aggressive, and we saw his aggressiveness in the game when they came to Assembly Hall. Obviously, we all know that we won that game, and that went how it was. But their offense is going to center around Bryce McGowens moving forward. If it already wasn't, that's the player that Hoosier fans need to look out for sure.
Yeah, Matt. I was just going to say, Bryce McGowens is a good player. It's funny. Bryce McGowens and Keegan Murray both projected to be first-round NBA draft picks in the 2022 draft. We'll see how all that plays out. What's the Hoosiers' game plan here going into this matchup against Nebraska?
Let him shoot 3-pointers. I mean, the McGowens and Verge shoot 25% from 3 each. You just let them shoot. Stack the lane against them, make sure they don't get anything inside, and let them shoot. Now they have some decent 3-point shooters. Kisei Tominaga. Yep. Tominaga is a pretty good 3-point shooter, even though he's shooting 33%. Kobe Webster can spread the floor, and so can CJ Wilcher. If you're guarding somebody as Derek Walker, Alonzo Verge, and Bryce McGowens, they're 3 biggest minutes getters. You don't care if they're taking 3-pointers because it's not efficient for them. By the way, Bryce McGowens really reminds me of freshman Romeo a little bit. I think there's a lot of similarities in them. Bryce being a 6'7", 6'6" guard / wing that can play with the ball, has a little bit of playmaking in him, but again struggles with the 3-point shot, which is strange. He shoots 83% from the free throw percentage, so NBA scouts will look at that and go, he can shoot the 3 eventually. And I think that is the case. He'll be able to extend his range at some point, but right now it's just not translating to the college game, which is unfortunate for Nebraska team that could really use him to be a threat from there, because teams are, like IU should, going to start dialing back the defense on closeouts on him, because he's just, if he's making 1 of every 4, he's 2 of 8 at the end of the day, and that's a lot of long rebounds to chase after.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I see some comments in the chat. Rob is saying Johnny Davis also has a twin. must be in vogue here.
We got to find twins. IU basketball needs to be in Indianapolis Hospital right now looking for twins. All right. They're getting scholarship offers.
What's
both
the
right
class
now.
of what is that? 2045 or something.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, it's funny, right? You talk about Nebraska's struggles from shooting the deep ball. 28.3% this season, which ranks 335th out of 358 D1 teams. What that also might mean is they're due. And you're seeing that a little bit tonight as we are live here on Tuesday night at halftime against Illinois. They're 5 of 9. With that said, they just have so many other weaknesses. And as I look at this Nebraska team, you're also playing them, unless, of course, they get a big win against Illinois or a big win against Purdue. They seem more down right now, just as far as their spirit is concerned, than at any point in the season. And if you can especially get them early in a game, I think you can sort of take the will out of them. And I'm expecting Indiana to do that against the Cornhuskers on Monday evening. Nebraska cannot rebound. I mean, especially since we saw them last. They lost 4-star true freshman Wilhelm Breidenbach, sort of a long, rangy forward. He got hurt against Michigan. He won't be available against IU coming up. I believe he's out for the remainder of the regular season at least. So Nebraska is going to have a tough time keeping Indiana off the glass. Now, the one thing they do well, they do protect the ball. They don't give it away too much. I remember against Ohio State in an overtime game, they only had 8 turnovers. Against Illinois in the first half tonight, they only have 4. So they do a good job of protecting the basketball. Jevan, as you look at this game, who are 1 or 2 Hoosiers you're looking to make a difference against Nebraska as the Hoosiers take them on Monday night?
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but Tamar Bates had his best game of
the
season.
So you're expecting Bates to have a big week.
Yeah, I think this is a week where he gets back into form. Like you mentioned, he's still raw. He's a freshman. The freshmen are going to go through these slumps. But he had his best game against Nebraska earlier on in the year when he had 13 points off the bench. I think that we maybe get to that a little bit more. And it's fun whenever he's playing well. He brings good, positive energy to the crowd, to his teammates, to himself. I would really love to see Tamar Bates have a breakout week.
Matt, Trace Jackson Davis led the Hoosiers with 14 points in the first matchup against Nebraska. Race Thompson had 11 boards. Some of the other numbers are just sort of spread around the rest of the team. Who are you expecting to step up for Indiana on Monday?
In Nebraska on the road, let's say we go to Iowa and, our nice predictions didn't turn out to be true. We'll still be hunting for our first road win. And I think it's the leader's job, that's Trace's job, to be the light, be the rock of the team. He's got to be the person that everybody looks at and they see his effort and they go, I can't give less than what he's giving. Yep. And so I think against Nebraska, he's got to have one of his best games that he's had at IU. If we lose to Iowa, if we beat Iowa to get that monkey off our back, all of a sudden you're looking at a much fresher, much more loose IU team. And then I think somebody like a Race Thompson or somebody like a Miller Kopp might be the guy that steps up the most for that game. But if we don't win this game at Iowa, it's got to be Trace because it starts and ends with Trace.
Yeah, and this to me also feels like a big Trace and Race game. I know it sounds like a broken record, but Nebraska is just so poor inside. And this is a perfect opportunity for Race and Trace to put together 20 rebounds, 22 rebounds, maybe 24 rebounds. Against this Nebraska team, we're probably going to miss a lot of shots. So I'm confident about what Indiana can put on the floor against Nebraska on Monday. Let's get to predictions. Jevan, I'll go to you first. Who wins this game and by how much?
I think Indiana picks up their second road win of the week. And I think they do so in dominating fashion, getting another Big Ten double-digit win. I think they win this game 76-61. and I think we win by 15 points.
All right. Matt, how about you? Who wins this game on Monday as the Hoosiers take on the Cornhuskers again?
I will be an extremely depressed human being if we lose on Monday night.
Oh,
So I use going to win this, and they're going to win it by a lot because we won the first game in what was kind of a too close for comfort game against Nebraska. I remember we didn't win that as comfortably as I wanted to. I think the end margin of that game was very complimentary of Nebraska.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't very complimentary of Nebraska, but they played better than what the final margin was. We won 68-55. That game was much closer for stretches of that game. I would like to see us win by like 18. So give me 68-50.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm just a little, I look at 28% from Nebraska, and now I see how they're doing against Illinois, and I'm saying, I think this is a team that's just due to make a few more threes. Of course, the quality of the shot matters. This is also the second time you're playing them, and Nebraska's kind of an underrated home arena. I think Indiana's going to win.
Did you just say Nebraska is an underrated home arena?
I believe it.
They're about
it is.
They're about no. They're
it's
about
an
as
underrated home arena. It's a tough.
No. No. They have the same home arena.
We have to get off Nithin's back.
They have great attendance numbers this year.
I feel like we've been on Nithin's back a lot this podcast. Okay,
I know, but you can't say to me that Nebraska is an underrated home arena. They are the second worst arena in the Big Ten. I'd rather go to the RAC than Nebraska home arena. It's like Northwestern.
It's not the RAC.
It's Northwestern, and then it's them, and then it's like Minnesota, the barn, maybe.
I think
like
Wisconsin is worse.
What?
Yeah, Wisconsin's a worse arena.
No shot.
Fun fact: Nebraska is the second highest home attendance in the Big Ten this year. Just behind Wisconsin.
There's nothing else to do in Lincoln. Like what else do you do in Nebraska? I don't know.
Anyway, I look at this game and I say Nebraska could get a little plucky as well as a little lucky. But I do think Indiana's going to win. I do think Indiana's going to win kind of an ugly sort of gross, like 67-62 type of win. So I think Indiana will get the victory. It is a big game because after the Hoosiers play Nebraska, things get serious. We talk about the Big Ten schedule. Yeah, it's always tough. And I know some of these teams coming up aren't quite as good, but on January 20th, the Hoosiers host Purdue. Then IU hosts Michigan and Penn State. Then you got a road trip to Maryland, then Illinois, road trips to Northwestern and Michigan State, home Wisconsin, at Ohio State, home Maryland, at Minnesota, home Rutgers, at Purdue. Things do pick up after IU plays Nebraska. So let's wind down, guys. Closing thoughts here. The Hoosiers get 2 Big Ten wins this past week and have 2 Big Ten road games coming up. Before we get to final thoughts, I did want to mention our podcast poll, our weekly podcast poll over on the Hoosiers Sound Twitter account, where I simply asked, what do you guys think is going to happen this week for the Hoosiers? And 58% agreed with us through the 200 votes that have been cast so far. 58% of you do think Indiana is going to go 2-0. I want to have conversations with the 3% of you that think Indiana is going to lose both games. If you're right, I will be pissed. Jevan, what are your closing thoughts here as we wind down? Because Indiana has put themselves in a good spot here going forward.
Yeah, we're in a great position moving forward. 2-0 last week. I think last week's games are, when you look at it in a few months, we're going to say, okay, those were a little more difficult than the next 2 games we're about to play. So it's almost necessary that we go 2-0 this week for a couple reasons. Let's get that monkey off our back and let's prove that we're forced to be reckoned with in the Big Ten. I want a big week from Trace and Race, and I want Tamar to have that breakout week. So those are my keys moving forward, and let's go 2-0.
Here we go. Matt, how about you? Your closing thoughts here as we wind down on this Tuesday night.
Lots of stuff happening in the IU sports universe. Women's team are killing it. This men's team should be ranked if they go 2-0 this week. I feel like that'll be the case. We'll have a nice big number next to our name for that Purdue game, which will be fun to watch. By the way, if you can go to the Purdue game, go to the Purdue game and yell your voice box out of your throat, please. Thank you. Should be the best home environment maybe in the last 10 years. You think about it, that Purdue game, we haven't won against Purdue. Finally have a team that can beat them. They look beatable now, not like they did at the beginning of the year. And it's like the first huge home game back with all the students.
Yeah.
So it should be a fantastic environment. I'm very excited to talk about that on next week's podcast.
Yeah, and my final thoughts basically surround Trace Jackson Davis. I mean, you got to recognize what you have here. I mean, Trace Jackson Davis is somebody who is firmly in the discussion of the best IU men's basketball player since the end of the Bob Knight era. I mean, he has been exceptional this season. In addition to the product he has put on the court the first 2 years, the way he's blocking shots, and then on the next level, the way he's affecting the ones that he doesn't block, it's pretty special to watch. And, Hoosier fans don't overlook the kind of contribution that Trace Jackson is putting up. There are 300 plus teams in college basketball that wish they had him on their team. And then I agree with Matt's sentiments. Assembly Hall, look, fans, you were not able to go last season. Students and non-students and everyone make Assembly Hall a major home court advantage for this team, because to this point, they've deserved your support. Support's usually there. It'd be great to see it cranked up to another level here as the Hoosiers play Big Ten opposition. But that about wraps it up. For our 234th show of the Hoosier Sound, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. You're all beautiful people. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ as well as at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.